How's it going, folks? I'm Matt, and this is fotosyntech. Welcome to another episode of The Grow Show. This week, I'd like to talk to you about how to buy a grow light, specifically an LED grow light. Let's get into it. Grow lights. Arguably the most important piece of equipment that you're going to have to buy for your grow space, because it is truly the engine that drives your grow. Now, before I get into talking about these 5 categories that I've got listed here, I just wanted to cover a couple of important concepts. PAR, PPFD, and efficacy. PAR is the description of the light required for your plant to grow. It stands for photosynthetically active radiation, and it's a description of the range of light in the spectrum that your plant requires for popular growth. Proper, there we go. PPFD is a measure of the PAR in any given space. So you'll do a measurement, you'll see these in the light specifications. It looks like a map, and it's got a whole bunch of different numbers on it. And this is the photosynthetic photon flux density measured at each one of these spots in a grid. And it's just an overall measurement of how good that light is, how able that light is to produce light in a uniform pattern on the ground, well, plant canopy. And finally, efficacy. Efficacy is a rating of light produced versus the amount of energy required to produce it. So a good light will have an efficacy of about 2.0 micromoles per joule, and that's really telling you how much light it's producing on average per given electrical input. Better lights, 2.5 to 2.7. Newer lights are hitting over that 3.0 mark. If you're seeing a light with an efficacy of less than 2.0, probably stay away from it. So the numbers that are important: PAR, you want your PAR, of course, to be between that at least 400 to 700 range, but getting down from the 380 to the 760 is even better. And you want a average photosynthetic photon flux density, PPFD, of, well, and I'll get into this, understanding what you need it for. And that'll be the first thing that we talk about in just a minute here. But for veg stage, you need a PPFD of about 300 to 500, 200 to 500. And then for flowering, you're going to need a lot more. You're going to need 500, 600, 700 and up. It's really, really important to get up into that 800 to 900 range. Going past 1,000 to 1,200, you're going to start getting into the requirement of things like CO2. But we're not going to get into that today. So just understand that veg and flower have different requirements, and let's talk about that next. First thing that I want to talk about is understanding what you need in a grow light. You're going to have requirements. You're not going to go out and buy a 5x5 area light for a 2x2 space. I mean, come on, that'd be ridiculous. But understanding, well, first and foremost, is this light going to be for flower only? Or are you going to use it for the vegetative state only? Maybe you want full for both. Maybe you just have a single grow space. How big is your space? And this is critical. So if you've got a 4x4 space, you could, for example, go with 4 2x2 lights or 1 big 4x4 light. There's something to be said for buying modular, and let's just talk about that. If you have a light fail, well, if you've got a big light and it fails and your entire grow is down, but if you've got 4 smaller lights and they continue to work well and 1 fails, you still have 3 lights that are working well. That's what I like about these Mars Hydro TS1000s. These lights, again, 2x2 space, they're good all the way up to flower, and if you're running, say, 4 of them in a 4x4 space and 1 goes down, it's not the end of the world. Now, one of the other things that you have to consider are, well, how big is your space in terms of height? It's not just the footprint that the light's going to land on, it's how big do you have for up and down. And what about cooling restrictions? Maybe you've got a room that's already fairly warm, and adding a light with a big, heavy, not so efficient driver is going to cause more issues, and you're going to need to get an AC system. And this is why I say, stay away from some of these older style lights, because they just don't have the level of efficiency that LED does. So if you're going with CMH or metal halide, no, that is CMH, high pressure sodium, you're going to need to consider AC and additional cooling and that sort of thing. with LEDs, odds are you can probably just use an exhaust fan, unless you've got a big bulky driver. And well, we'll talk more about sort of the nice to haves as we get towards the end. But the big thing is, again, understanding what you need. What are you trying to buy for? And then what is your budget? Because again, you want to try and spend the most money you can on a good light right off the top, because that's going to allow you to get the maximum potential out of your space. But don't let that break the bank. If you have to go modular, if you have to go, buy one light and then buy another light and buy another light to eventually build up that space, do it that way. But get something of good quality. Number 2, regulatory. Now, I just touched on good quality, and buying something that has a regulatory approval on it is going to at least take that first step to ensure that you're getting something of quality. What it means is that product has been tested and approved by the governing regulatory body for your country. So if you're here in Canada like I am, you're looking for a CSA stamp, perhaps you're down in the States and you want an Underwriter Laboratory stamp, the UL. Over in Germany, the TUV stamp, which stands for something I'm not sure, but it's just an example. It's depending on where you are, it should have some sort of stamp on it, something on the label. Make sure that's there, and there's a couple of reasons why. And the first and foremost is fire. You've got a device that's meant to create heat, that's meant to create light, and it's pretty high-powered device in the sense that if something goes wrong, you could get a runaway that just causes all sorts of heat issues, possibly fire. And if that thing doesn't have a regulatory stamp on it, if it's some sort of cheapo light that you got off Alibaba and it burns down your house, good luck in dealing with the insurance company on that one. The other thing is, you have to look at what you're buying in terms of, is it DIY? Because a lot of these DIY kits aren't going to come fully assembled, tested and approved by, again, that regulatory body. So buying a DIY kit off of some, again, Alibaba company or some fly-by-night company that you found on Amazon, it's going to be taking a big risk. You may find that some components have regulatory approval, like the power supply may have some stamps on it, but that's just for the power supply. It doesn't mean that everything's been put together and tested as a system. So look at the components and how they come. Do they have good heavy gauge wiring? Are the connectors that you're using to put them together, are they good friction fit, don't require any sort of screwing to put them together? Wago connectors, for example, those are a really good one. I've seen those before, and it's just a press fit. But ultimately, you want to make sure that if you're buying something DIY and it doesn't come with a regulatory marking, it's coming with at least some sort of a warranty, and it's coming from a good company that can offer good customer support. And let's talk about those 2 items next. Number 3, warranty. So it's electronic. Electronics are generally going to fail after multiple years of use or within the first couple of weeks. I mean, it might be right out of the box. This is why it's important to understand how extensive the warranty is, what are your obligations as a customer, and if it fails specifically, what do you do? Mars, for example, Mars Hydro, my sponsor, they have a pretty good warranty as far as I'm concerned. The first year, it's everything's covered. The second year, you pay for shipping, they cover parts. Third year, it's, I think they'll send you the parts and then you replace them yourself. And for a light like this, it's pretty easy to replace parts on. I mean, it's not much to it. But the important thing is really understanding what that warranty is and will it work for you? Because if it does fail, what are your options? What's your recourse? Buying that cheap light off of Alibaba? Well, odds are you don't have any recourse if it fails. Number 4, reviews. Now, this is a slippery slope. I'm going to say this right now. You have to look at reviews, well, first and foremost, just to see what others are saying, but also to get an idea on, are you getting something that has been shilled? And there's a company out there, I'm not going to name them specifically, their initials are a BP, use that if you will, but they have been widely known lately to be soliciting reviews for product. They'll send you a light in exchange for a 5-star review. Now, I've been sent all sorts of products since I've had the channel here, and I've done lots of reviews, and never once have I been asked to give a 5-star review. I've been asked to review the products and rate them accordingly, but never been asked to give a review. So if you've got a company that's doing that, I mean, huge red flag. It tells me that they, first, don't believe in their own product, and two, that, well, they have to pay to get people to actually like it, despite the fact they're giving them, product. I don't know, it's a slippery slope. But that being said, you look at the 1-star and look at the sort of 3 and 4-star reviews. The 1-star potentially could be people that are jaded, but they might also give you some insight if these lights that you're looking at are entirely pieces of garbage. But really, like those 3 or 4-star reviews, that's where you're going to find people who are happy with the product, but may find 1 or 2 things wrong. It's grain of salt, so be careful what you're looking at. And if you see a bunch of 5-star reviews, 5-star reviews, 5-star reviews, then you might want to start suspecting something. The last point that I wanted to touch on are the nice to have. Now, some of these might be necessary. I talked about this a little bit at the beginning. I talked about, having a height restriction in your grow space, and maybe you've got cooling requirements. So things like having a removable driver, a driver that detaches from the body of the light, has a long AC cord on it, that allows you to place it outside the grow tent or possibly outside the room, might be necessary. It just might be nice to have. So that's one of the things. And I personally like it because it's nice to have options. Now, having a dimmer on that light, well, again, that's going to help deal with potential cooling requirements or height restrictions, because if your plants are growing up too close to the light, well, you can always turn it down. Or maybe you've got a ceiling restriction and you can only run the light at 70%. That's what I've got out my 3x3 right now with my Mars Hydro FCE 4800. The light is such a beast, I can only run it at about 75%. But you know what? It's such a beast that doesn't seem to be an issue. And that light also has that expanded spectrum. Got the UV, got the far red. Killer light. Now, modular lights, again, that FCE 4800, it allows you to pull bars off and whatnot, and you can set it up in, a way that works for you. I'm just, again, running it full snot, except the thing's turned down, because that's what works for me. But to touch on one thing, cheap accessories. I've seen companies do this, and Mars hasn't been excluded, that throw a bunch of stuff in the box to make it look a little bit more attractive. This could be things like rope ratchets. Now, that's never a bad idea. Even if it's a cheap rope ratchet, they still tend to work without issue. But there's other things like hygrometers and thermometers, and maybe it's a pair of sunglasses or something. It's stuff that's made to make you buy the kit, and honestly, it's the cheapest of the cheap because it's a free accessory. So maybe shy away from getting the kitted light and buy the light just standalone, and then you can get some better quality rope ratchets with the metal gears and proper shades to protect your eyes. So there you go, guys. There's 5 different things to be aware of when you're buying a light and things to look out for. But again, I just want to touch again on these cheap lights, and especially the DIY ones. If you're getting a light that comes and it's just a thin metal heat sink and it's got a bunch of big bulky LEDs and thin wires and you got screw terminals and it gets hot, and that's the key one, it gets hot. I mean, warm to the touch is one thing. You should be able to put your hand on your driver and hold it on there for at least several seconds without it being painful. But if you're touching your light and it's like, damn, you can't even get near that, huge red flag. Contact the manufacturer, return the light. Don't even buy that piece of garbage to begin with, because it's going to cause you potential, I'll get extreme, loss of life. It could burn down your house with your family inside. And then where are you then? You saved a couple bucks on a light. So, rant over. Guys, let's go check out my grow, because, we got the pumpkin to take a look at, and then there's the flower room. So let's head out there now.
All right, so we're here in the backyard and just getting ready to look at the gigantic pumpkin. Oh, and there it is. This thing's so big. I'm going to stick my hand on it. Oh, so you get an idea on just how massive it is. I'm guessing we're probably 35 to 40 pounds in weight now. This thing is just huge. So we'll continue doing updates on that. Otherwise, the rest of the stuff out here, well, the autos are doing great. This pink Panama, I think she's just about getting close to done. We're starting to get some fade on her and whatnot. And, we're going to start checking out the trikes here real soon. Real quick, that's Cheddar. Hi, Cheddar. And finally, the wedding thrasher. Well, this thing's kicking butt. I am super stoked. I'm just starting to now see some brown pistils. So we'll see where this goes over the next week or two here. But both of these autos are getting close to done. Anyway, let's go inside and check out the indoor grow. And here we are inside the flower room. So well, let's go left to right here and just kind of go over what's going on. So we're getting week 5 here. Everything is looking absolutely beautiful with the sticky sheets, critical mass, and Divine Madness. Now, granted, the critical mass here, it's about 10 days behind, but you really wouldn't know it by looking at it. I mean, the buds are a little bit smaller, but coming along really well. This sticky sheet's just beautiful, real fruity smell coming off it, super pungent. You can see I got the pistils are just starting to turn brown. That's expected for where it's at, you know, after about day 35. So this is looking really good. Otherwise, the week 4 stuff, we've got the Orange Dream, which one is this? Is the Cheese Dog, Purple Haze, and Maui Wowie. Everything's coming along really well. I did a bunch of defoliation on the canopy this week. It was getting a little thick in here for humidity, so I had to go through and defoliate, and that helped. And you can see everything is just doing wonderfully. Super happy with this grow so far. And finally, over here under the star of the grow, the FCE 4800. Again, modular design. It's got that full spectrum, that lower UV and the far red. We've got Large Marge here on the right, and of course, living up to her name, you can see that she's stretching out there in the back. Just darn near touching that light. I'm gonna have to probably take in Super Cropper. And then Big Bertha on the left. These are my JMO strains, those in-house genetics. This is run number 3, I believe, with these girls. And yeah, well, living up to their names. Yeah, so that's it, guys. That's what's going on this week. You know, if you want to follow us, check out the Patreon, check out the Discord. If you want to contact me, fotosyntech1@gmail.com, guys. Always happy to chat with you. Reach out there and we'll get you hooked up. I'm Matt. This is Fotosyntech. We out.